There is somebody in this room tonight who is tired of smiling on the outside while fighting battles on the inside. Tired of clapping for everybody else while secretly wondering when it will be your turn. You have watched others rise. You have watched doors open for people who didn't seem more talented, more gifted, or more deserving than you. And if you're honest, there were nights you questioned yourself. Nights you wondered if you missed your moment. Nights you ask, maybe I'm not enough. But what if the delay wasn't denial? What if the pressure you've been feeling isn't proof that you're breaking, but proof that you're becoming? Diamonds don't form in comfort. Strength isn't built in ease. And the reason the weight feels heavy is because what's inside of you is valuable. You survived things that were meant to silence you. You're still standing after seasons that should have taken you out. That's not accidental. That's not luck. That's purpose breathing through pain. So before you give up, before you settle, before you shrink to fit into spaces that were never designed for your greatness, remember this: the fact that you're still here means your story isn't finished. And if you still have breath in your body, there is still something powerful waiting to break through your life. Belief is the foundation of breakthrough because nothing changes outwardly until something shifts inwardly. Every accomplishment, every innovation, every transformation first begins as a thought that is nurtured into conviction. Before a building stands tall against the skyline, it exists as a blueprint in the mind of an architect. Before a champion lifts a trophy, victory is rehearsed in the imagination long before it is realized in reality. The same principle applies to your life. What you consistently believe about yourself becomes the soil from which your future grows. Belief is not wishful thinking. It is not blind optimism. It is a settled confidence that refuses to be shaken by temporary evidence. When you truly believe, you act differently. Your posture shifts. Your decisions become bolder. Your tolerance for mediocrity decreases. You begin to align your behavior with your expectation. And that alignment is powerful because when your inner world and outer actions agree, momentum is created. Many people desire breakthrough, but few cultivate belief. They want the result without developing the root. Yet breakthrough does not respond to desperation. It responds to conviction. If deep down you doubt your worth, your potential, or your ability, that doubt will subtly sabotage your efforts. You will hesitate when you should advance. You will shrink when you should speak. You will retreat when you should stand firm, not because you lack talent, but because you lack belief. Belief sets the standard for what you will accept. If you believe you deserve excellence, you will not settle for less. If you believe you are capable, you will attempt what others avoid. If you believe your life has purpose, you will endure hardship with resilience. Belief strengthens your endurance because it gives meaning to your struggle. When you are convinced that something greater is ahead, you can tolerate what is uncomfortable now. Breakthrough requires pressure. It often demands that you stretch beyond familiarity. Without belief, pressure feels like punishment. With belief, pressure feels like preparation. The same situation can either crush you or carve you, depending on what you believe about yourself in the middle of it. If you see challenges as confirmation of your inadequacy, you will retreat. If you see them as confirmation of your growth, you will rise. Belief also influences how others respond to you. People are naturally drawn to confidence, not arrogance, but assurance. When you carry yourself with quiet certainty, you signal readiness. Opportunities tend to gravitate toward those who appear prepared to handle them. This is not magic. It is alignment. When you believe you can, you project capability. When you project capability, doors begin to open. But belief must be intentional. It must be fed. The mind absorbs whatever it repeatedly hears and sees. If you constantly rehearse past failures, your belief will weaken. If you surround yourself with voices that minimize your potential, your confidence will erode. You must guard your internal dialogue. Replace self-criticism with self-encouragement. Replace comparison with gratitude. Replace doubt with possibility. Belief is built through small acts of courage. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, belief strengthens. Every time you attempt something that stretches you, belief expands. It is like a muscle. It grows with use. Waiting to feel completely confident before acting is a mistake. Action often precedes assurance. The more you step forward, the more your belief solidifies. Breakthrough is not accidental. It is the visible result of invisible conviction. Long before the applause, Long before the recognition, there was a private decision to believe despite uncertainty. That decision is where transformation begins. When you cultivate unshakable belief, you lay the groundwork for change that cannot easily be reversed. Your mindset determines your momentum because the direction of your thoughts ultimately shapes the direction of your life. The way you perceive yourself, your circumstances, and your future influences how you respond to opportunities and obstacles. Mindset is not just a collection of thoughts. It is the lens through which you interpret reality. Two people can face the same challenge and walk away with completely different outcomes, not because of talent or resources, but because of how they think about what stands before them. A limited mindset magnifies barriers. It focuses on what is missing, what went wrong, and what might fail. When your thinking is dominated by fear or scarcity, hesitation becomes your default response. You second-guess your decisions. You delay action. You overanalyze possibilities until the opportunity passes. Momentum stalls not because you lack ability, but because your mindset has placed invisible brakes on your progress. The mind can either be an engine that propels you forward or an anchor that keeps you stuck in familiar waters. On the other hand, a growth-oriented mindset expands possibility. It sees challenges as teachers rather than threats. When setbacks occur, it asks, "What can I learn?" instead of declaring, "I knew I couldn't." That subtle shift in thinking changes everything. It keeps you moving. It allows you to adapt rather than abandon your goal. Momentum thrives on movement, and movement begins in the mind. When you believe that improvement is possible, you remain open to feedback, new strategies, and unexpected paths. Your mindset also affects your energy. Negative thinking is exhausting. It drains enthusiasm and clouds judgment. When you constantly anticipate failure, you carry emotional weight that slows your pace. Positive and constructive thinking, however, fuels resilience. It generates hope, and hope produces endurance. You are more willing to try again when you believe your effort matters. Energy flows in the direction of belief, and sustained energy builds consistent action. Consistency is where momentum becomes powerful. One action may spark progress, but repeated action creates acceleration. Mindset determines whether you persist long enough to see results. When your thinking is disciplined, you are less likely to quit at the first sign of discomfort. You understand that meaningful growth requires patience. Instead of demanding immediate results, you commit to steady improvement. Over time, small, focused actions compound into significant breakthroughs. The environment you create around your mind matters as well. What you read, what you listen to, and who you engage with all shape your perspective. If you surround yourself with negativity, criticism, and doubt, your thinking will reflect that atmosphere. If you intentionally seek inspiration, wisdom, and constructive dialogue, your mindset will strengthen. Protecting your mental space is not selfish. It is strategic. You cannot expect forward momentum while consistently feeding your mind with defeat. Mindset also influences how you view failure. A fixed perspective treats mistakes as proof of inadequacy. A resilient perspective treats mistakes as part of development. When you detach your identity from a single outcome, you give yourself permission to grow. This freedom reduces fear, and reduced fear increases action. The less afraid you are of stumbling, the more willing you are to step forward. Every step builds confidence, and confidence sustains momentum. Ultimately, your life moves in the direction of your dominant thoughts. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you are capable, adaptable, and worthy of progress, your actions will align with that belief. If you constantly rehearse doubt and limitation, your behavior will mirror that narrative. The mind is powerful, but it requires intentional guidance. When you discipline your thinking, cultivate optimism grounded in effort, and refuse to let temporary setbacks define you, you create internal conditions that naturally propel you forward. Favor follows faith because confidence expressed through action creates alignment between preparation and opportunity. Faith in this sense is not passive belie, or empty optimism. It is a courageous decision to move forward, even when certainty is absent. It is choosing to trust your capacity, your preparation, and your purpose, despite incomplete information. When you operate from that kind of inner assurance, you position yourself in places where opportunities can find you. Many people wait for perfect conditions before they begin. They want clarity before commitment, guarantees before effort, applause before performance. But favor does not respond to hesitation. It responds to boldness rooted in conviction. When you step forward with belief, even in small ways, you signal readiness. You demonstrate that you are willing to participate in your own progress rather than merely wish for it. That willingness often attracts support, connections, and resources that were not visible at the start. Faith influences how you carry yourself. It shapes your tone, your posture, and your decision-making. When you believe something meaningful can happen, your energy changes. Others sense it. Confidence tends to inspire confidence in return. People are more inclined to collaborate with, invest in, or recommend someone who demonstrates clarity and assurance. This is not manipulation, it is alignment. Your internal certainty communicates capability, and capability invites trust. Favor is often described as being in the right place at the right time, but faith plays a significant role in positioning you in that place. When you act on your vision, you enter realms you might otherwise avoid. You introduce yourself to individuals you might otherwise overlook. You attempt projects you might otherwise postpone. These actions expand your exposure. Increased exposure increases probability. What appears to be sudden luck is frequently the result of repeated courageous steps. Faith also strengthens resilience. Not every effort yields immediate result. T.S. There will be delays, misunderstandings, and unexpected detours. Without faith, these experiences feel like confirmation that you should stop. With faith, they become temporary obstacles rather than permanent verdicts. You continue refining your approach. You adjust without abandoning your direction. That persistence keeps you in motion long enough for opportunity to intersect with preparation. There is also a psychological dimension to favor following faith. When you believe something positive is possible, you become more attentive to openings that support that belief. Your mind begins scanning for solutions rather than focusing on limitations. You notice connections others might ignore. You interpret challenges as strategic problems to solve rather than reasons to retreat. This heightened awareness allows you to capitalize on moments that might otherwise pass unnoticed. Faith requires vulnerability because it involves risk. You may not have all the answers. You may not feel entirely ready. Yet you choose to proceed anyway. That choice builds inner strength. Each step reinforces your belief in your own ability to navigate uncertainty. Over time, this confidence compounds. You begin to trust your instincts, your preparation, and your adaptability. That trust reduces fear and increases decisive action. When decisive action meets consistent effort, doors tend to open. People respond to initiative. Opportunities align with movement. Support often appears when others witness dedication and commitment. What seems like unearned advantage is frequently the natural outcome of sustained faith expressed through effort. Faith does not eliminate difficulty, nor does it guarantee instant success. What it does is create alignment between who you believe you can become and the actions required to reach that potential. That alignment draws opportunities closer, amplifies your visibility, and strengthens your persistence until preparation and timing converge. Opposition is proof of potential because resistance rarely forms around something insignificant. Pressure gathers where there is value. Criticism increases where there is visibility. Challenges intensify where there is movement. When you begin striving towards something meaningful, it disrupts comfort zones, both yours and sometimes those of others. That disruption often triggers pushback. Instead of interpreting that pushback as a sign to retreat, you can recognize it as confirmation that what you are pursuing carries weight. Consider how friction works in the physical world. Friction only exists when there is motion. If nothing moves, nothing resists. The moment you decide to elevate your standards, expand your goals, or step into unfamiliar territory, you create movement. That movement naturally meets resistance. The resistance is not always a signal of error. Sometimes it is a sign of progress. Growth stretches capacity, and stretching can feel uncomfortable. Opposition also refines character. When everything is easy, weaknesses remain hidden. Pressure exposes them. It reveals impatience, insecurity, or fear that may have been dormant. While exposure can feel unsettling, it provides an opportunity for strengthening. When you respond intentionally rather than emotionally, you build resilience. Each time you endure criticism without collapsing or face difficulty without quitting, you develop a deeper confidence rooted in experience. Many people misinterpret opposition as rejection. They assume that obstacles mean they are unqualified or unworthy, but often obstacles are invitations to elevate skill, sharpen focus, and clarify purpose. If a goal were truly beyond your capacity to grow into, you would likely never feel compelled to pursue it in the first place. The very fact that are drawn towards something challenging suggests that there is latent potential within you waiting to be developed. Opposition also filters commitment. When challenges arise, only genuine conviction remains. Casual interest fades under pressure. True dedication strengthens. In this way, resistance tests the depth of your desire. It forces you to decide whether your goal is a passing preference or a defining priority. That decision solidifies identity. When you continue despite setbacks, you prove to yourself that your aspirations are not fragile. Criticism, another form of opposition, can either distract or direct you. Not all criticism is constructive, but even negative feedback can strengthen resolve. Learning to distinguish between useful insight and unnecessary negativity is part of maturity. When you extract value from critique without internalizing discouragement, you convert opposition into improvement. This transformation shifts your perspective from defensive to developmental. Opposition can also expand creativity. When straightforward paths close, you are compelled to innovate. Limitations often inspire new strategies. Some of the most effective solutions emerge from moments when conventional approaches fail. If everything unfolded exactly as planned, ingenuity would remain underdeveloped. Resistance pushes you to think beyond familiar patterns. There is also a psychological advantage to facing opposition. Each challenge you overcome becomes evidence of capability. This evidence builds self-trust. The next time resistance appears, you recall previous victories. That memory reduces fear and strengthens determination. Over time, you begin to see obstacles not as threats, but as training grounds. Understanding opposition as proof of potential changes how you respond emotionally. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this preparing me for?" That shift transforms frustration into focus. It channels energy into growth rather than complaint. You stop shrinking in the face of resistance and start expanding through it. When you recognize that opposition often accompanies significance, you become less intimidated by difficulty. You understand that meaningful pursuits rarely travel smooth roads. The presence of resistance does not invalidate your direction. It can validate the magnitude of what you are attempting to achieve. Speak life over yourself because the words you consistently declare shape the identity you eventually embody. Language is not merely a tool for communication with others. It is a mechanism that programs your own thinking. What you say repeatedly begins to sound like truth, whether it empowers you or diminishes you. If you constantly describe yourself as incapable, unlucky, or unprepared, your mind will search for evidence to confirm those statements. If you deliberately affirm strength, growth, and possibility, your mind will begin aligning your behavior with those declarations. Internal dialogue often operates quietly, but its influence is powerful. Many limitations are reinforced not by external voices, but by the quiet commentary running in the background of your thoughts. Statements like, "I always mess this up," or "I'm not good enough," create patterns of hesitation. Over time, those patterns become habits. Habits shape outcomes. By the time you experience visible results, the narrative that produced them has already been rehearsed countless times. Speaking life over yourself does not mean ignoring weaknesses or pretending challenges do not exist. It means choosing constructive language that focuses on growth rather than deficiency. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you might say, "I am learning how to do this." That subtle adjustment preserves possibility. It leaves room for development. It shifts your identity from fixed to evolving. This mindset encourages persistence rather than surrender. Words also influence emotion. When you describe situations as hopeless or overwhelming, your body responds with tension and stress. When you frame the same situation as difficult but manageable, your emotional response becomes more balanced. Calmness improves clarity. Clarity improves decision-making. In this way, your language directly impacts your performance. Speaking life creates a psychological environment where resilience can thrive. There is also a relational dimension to self-directed speech. The way you talk about yourself sets expectations for how others treat you. If you consistently undermine your abilities, others may hesitate to entrust you with responsibility. When you express confidence grounded in effort and preparation, people are more inclined to believe in your competence. Your words shape perception, and perception influences opportunity. Negative self-talk often originates from past experiences, mistakes, rejection, or criticism. Without intentional correction, those experiences can define your internal script. To speak life over yourself requires conscious interruption of that script. It involves recognizing when you are repeating old narratives that no longer serve your growth. Replacing them with affirming statements does not erase history, but it prevents history from dictating your future. Consistency is essential. Occasional positive statements cannot outweigh daily criticism. Just as physical strength develops through repeated exercise, mental resilience strengthens through repeated affirmation. This practice may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if self-criticism has been habitual. Over time, however, intentional encouragement becomes more natural. Mind adapts to what it hears most frequently. Speaking life also fuels action. Encouraging language increases willingness to attempt challenging tasks. When you tell yourself that effort matters and improvement is possible, you are more likely to take initiative. Action then reinforces belief. Each completed step becomes evidence that your words are aligned with reality. This cycle builds confidence that is both internal and experiential. Silence can sometimes be harmful if it allows negative thoughts to dominate unchecked. Choosing to verbalize empowering statements, whether aloud or internally, disrupts patterns of doubt. It redirects focus toward capability and growth. Words become tools for construction rather than demolition. When you intentionally speak life over yourself, you participate in shaping your identity. You nurture confidence, strengthen resilience, and create an atmosphere where progress feels attainable. Your language becomes a steady reminder that you are not defined by temporary setbacks, but by your ongoing capacity to learn, adapt, and advance. Step before you see the whole staircase means embracing action, even when the full picture is not visible. Clarity often comes through movement, not before it. Many people delay progress because they are waiting for certainty, waiting for guarantees, waiting for every detail to be mapped out. But growth rarely unfolds that way. The path reveals itself gradually, one step at a time, and only to those willing to move without having all the answers. Uncertainty can feel uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control. When you cannot see the entire journey, your mind imagines potential risks and worst-case scenarios. Fear begins to whisper that you are not ready, not prepared, not equipped, yet readiness is often developed through the very process you are hesitating to begin. You gain skill by practicing. You build confidence by attempting. You strengthen resilience by navigating challenges as they arise. Taking the first step requires courage, but it also builds momentum. Once you begin, you gather information that was previously unavailable. You discover strengths you did not know you possessed. You identify weaknesses that need refinement. This feedback loop is invaluable. It transforms abstract dreams into tangible experiences. Without stepping forward, you remain in speculation. With movement, you enter discovery. Perfectionism is one of the greatest enemies of progress. The desire to have everything perfectly aligned before starting can lead to prolonged inaction. Conditions will never be flawless. There will always be variables beyond your control. Waiting for the ideal moment often becomes an excuse to avoid vulnerability. Starting imperfectly is more powerful than waiting indefinitely. Progress favors participation, not hesitation. Action also clarifies direction. Sometimes you believe you want a specific outcome, but only through experience do you understand what truly aligns with your values and abilities. The first step does not lock you into a single path. It provides insight. Adjustments are easier to make when you are already moving. A stationary position offers little perspective. Movement creates awareness. Stepping forward demonstrates